What's up YouTube, it's the one and only legend of winning, aka Low, and I'm back with another video. Now for the people out there who are unaware, this is my 4 biggest losers of the NBA offseason. Last video I uploaded was my 4 biggest winners, so make sure you go check that out at the end of this video. And also I uploaded another video on my channel where I just did a quick overview of all the major moves that happened in this year's offseason. And also before we get into this video, let me be extremely clear, there are certain moves that still haven't been made yet, certain players that possibly could be traded. So as of right now, some of these things hold true today. However, there's a possibility that some of these teams could potentially make some moves so they're no longer the biggest losers. However, as of right now, here are my 4 biggest losers in the NBA offseason. Coming in at number 4, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavaliers last year had a pretty successful season, being another top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference, completely annihilating every single competition that is in that conference and making it to their 3rd straight finals appearance. However, it did end in bittersweetness because they obviously lost in the NBA Finals to the Golden State Warriors. Because of their loss, you will believe that the Cleveland Cavaliers will make some type of offseason moves to put themselves in a better situation to win next season, especially when there's a possibility that LeBron may be leaving next offseason. However, the Cleveland Cavaliers were completely unorganized and failed miserably in this year's offseason. Everything started in the beginning of the offseason when the Cleveland Cavaliers and general manager David Griffin just weren't on the same page. Now, you would believe that an organization that needs to make moves would be at least inclined to bring back the general manager for at least another season, especially if that last season entails LeBron. However, the Cleveland Cavaliers decided to move on with David Griffin and didn't really have a backup plan, which is something that's extremely concerning because you would assume that if they were going to move forward without David Griffin that they would have at least a backup plan. However, out of nowhere they pulled out Chauncey Billups' name and he didn't even accept the job. I'm just completely confused by what's going on here. Not only that, David Griffin at the time hadn't even interviewed for any other team. So it seems as if the decision to let David Griffin go was all at the last minute, which again is completely unorganized, and it just doesn't make any sense if you're a team that's in dire need to bring some talent to the organization. Also, if we're talking about the desire and need to bring more talent, it came off extremely desperate by all of the rumors that were around the Cleveland Cavaliers and their players, regardless if it was Kevin Love, Tristan Thompson, and then it was like a week or 2 of Kyrie Irving, which definitely is pretty desperate. The Cleveland Cavaliers tried their best but failed miserably every single time they were in trade rumors to bring some type of quality player. So with Kevin Love still on the team, LeBron on his last year's contract, and Tristan Thompson being vastly overpaid, the Cleveland Cavaliers put themselves in another situation for another season where financially they were just stuck and unable to do any major moves to make them better. On the other hand, to make matters worse, the Golden State Warriors, not only did they retain all of their free agents, but they actually added some very quality pieces as well, making the gap between Golden State and the Cavaliers a bit wider. Coming in at number 3, we have the Chicago Bulls. Chicago's on this list quite simply because they lost Jimmy Butler. Last offseason, the organization made some pretty drastic decisions, one which was trading Derrick Rose and the other one which was allowing Joakim Noah to just basically walk off without receiving anything in return. Now, many people would argue that those players, because of their injury history, their value was down the drain, and I would somewhat agree with you. So when those transactions transpired, you would believe that the organization would have this euphoric moment and understand that they more than likely would have to move Jimmy Butler sooner than later, because there's absolutely positively no way that they will be able to build a quality team around Jimmy within the next couple of months. However, that moment never really happened for the organization. What they decided to do was double down with Jimmy Butler and add 2 players, Rondo and D Wade, who were vastly overpaid to the organization. Since day one, majority of people understood that more than likely is not even going to work. So the season went on, they struggled, trade deadline passed, and Jimmy Butler stayed on the organization, and the team got knocked out in the first round. So here we are a year later, and the same question is asked, are they going to move Jimmy Butler? And now that a season has passed and there's fewer years on Jimmy Butler's contract, his trade value has obviously gone down. So the organization was forced to trade Jimmy Butler to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and in return they received some quality young players. However, there's some massive questions with every single player that they received in that transaction. One, you have Chris Dunn, who spent 4 years in college and struggled tremendously in his rookie season. Two, you have Zach LaVine, a hyper-athletic shooting guard that tore his ACL at the end of the season, and at best is a 20-point scorer, and I quite honestly believe that he more than likely will be on the bench for any title contender. And then you got to move up in the draft to the 7th pick and decided to go with Lauri Markkanen. Now, I'm not saying that Lauri Markkanen isn't going to be a quality player. However, the odds of Lauri Markkanen being a bust in the NBA is more likely than him being a star quality player. And also, people, can we please stop comparing every white 7-foot player who can shoot the ball to Dirk Nowitzki? It's getting really old. And also, they decided to draft Jordan Bell, but then turn around and gave him away to the Golden State Warriors for like $3 million. I just don't understand that whatsoever. And the cherry on top of all of this is that they're more than likely going to have to pay both Rondo and Wade without either one of them finishing the season on their team. Now, coming in at number 2, we have the Portland Trail Blazers. The Trail Blazers are in a situation that a lot of people just are not talking about, and it's more than likely a situation that will hinder them moving forward. The Trail Blazers last year, just like a lot of teams, bought into the idea that the salary cap was going to inflate so much so that it was going to justify any team by signing any player to any ridiculous contract. And even though, yes, a lot of teams made mistakes, a lot of teams also corrected their mistakes this offseason, which is the reason why you saw a lot of movement from quality players just because certain organizations want to get rid of certain contracts. So because of this, you would assume that the Portland Trail Blazers would also move some assets as well to get rid of some of the crazy contracts that they signed in last year's offseason. However, they didn't. And now that they didn't, more than likely it's going to be much more harder to move some of these pieces because some of the teams that were willing and able to accept the crazy contracts, now they don't have that much cap flexibility. And let me be more specific. Last year, the organization signed Allen Crabbe and Evan Turner to 2 contracts that are just ridiculous. Every single year, Allen Crabbe and Evan Turner will be making over $17 million. Both players are coming off of the bench, which again makes no sense. However, there was a possibility for them to move some pieces, especially when they moved up to the 10th pick in the NBA draft this year. However, for whatever reason, and I quite honestly just don't understand this at all, instead of pairing the 10th pick with Evan Turner and getting you some cap flexibility moving forward, they decided to go ahead and draft a player with the 10th pick, which again makes no sense. But to make matters worse, what they decided to do was select Zach Collins, which again is also a massive head scratcher. Now, I'm not saying they were supposed to select Malik Monk or anyone else at that shooting guard position because they obviously already have CJ McCollum. But the thing that makes things even worse, and possibly the reason why they drafted Zach Collins, is because Nurkic next season is when his contract expires. So there is a possibility that the Portland Trail Blazers already knew that Nurkic was going to be moved from the organization anyway because they might not have enough money moving forward to sign him to a massive contract that he rightfully deserves, which is also pretty crazy. If one, they decide to keep Nurkic, they'll be so over the salary cap it would be ridiculous. As of right now, and I understand that everyone isn't signed, but as of right now they have the second highest salary cap in the NBA, and again that's with Nurkic on a rookie contract. So if they decide to keep Nurkic next season, their salary cap would go through the roof and the amount of luxury tax that they would end up having to pay would be ridiculous, especially from a team that's not even contending for a championship. Hopefully moving forward they do have a possibility, which I don't know the possibility. There's rumors that they possibly could trade for Carmelo Anthony, and that would definitely be a move to try to get rid of some of the crazy contracts that they have on their roster. However, if they don't get Carmelo Anthony, I really don't know of any possible moves that they will be able to make outside of trading CJ McCollum or Damian Lillard. And then finally, coming in at number 1, we have the Indiana Pacers. Now this right here is pretty self-explanatory. Indiana lost Paul George this season in probably one of the most idiotic ways I've ever seen a team lose a quality star in the last couple years. The Pacers knew since the beginning of last season that this was going to be a problem throughout the entire year. With Paul George only having 2 years left on his contract, there was a very, very clear understanding that if the Indiana Pacers weren't going to be able to contend and compete in the Eastern Conference, then more likely he was going to ask for a trade. So with that type of pressure on an organization, you would believe that the Indiana Pacers would wake up and at least try to build something of quality around him. And even though in last year's offseason it seemed as if there were some quality pieces that were put around Paul George, such as Jeff Teague, Thaddeus Young, and Al Jefferson, it still just wasn't enough. Fast forward to the trading deadline and they still did not pull the trigger on Paul George, which doesn't make any sense. Now the understanding behind this was that possibly that the Pacers will be able to contend in the Eastern Conference as long as they're able to avoid LeBron, and if that doesn't work, then there's still a possibility that Paul George will be an All-NBA player, and if he is, then they would have the ability to give him the Supermax. However, none of that happened. With the trade value of Paul George slowly but surely, matter of fact, let me stop lying. The trade value of Paul George is completely decreased to the point where the only thing that the Indiana Pacers could receive was Victor Oladipo and Sabonis. But with all that being said, people, let me know what you think about this NBA offseason. Let me know who you think are the biggest losers in this offseason as well. And also hit the subscribe button and let me know anything else you want me to talk about in the comment section below. But with all that being said, people, I will see you all later. Peace.